I want to play what's been going on over on Capitol Hill. This is how they've been talking about the vice president.
We are in the fight for.
Biden said, first off, he said he's going to hire a black female for vice president, and that he just skipped over. What about white females? What about any other group? When you go down that route, you take mediocrity, and that's what they have right now as a vice president. 100%. She was a DEI hire. Her record is abysmal at best.
First, it's the DEI hire part first, and then it's the record. But they can't help themselves but going at the race part of this.
Let me just say something here.
Please do.
This is going to work out badly because they worked very hard to attract black men into the Republican Party. They worked very hard to attract Latin men into the Republican Party. And they were getting a little bit of momentum there. There were a lot of black men who were saying, no, the Democrats don't do anything for us, and Biden's weak, and they're starting to look over there at the Republican Party. You start insulting black women, you're going to see something you haven't seen before. Black men are not going to put up with that. I want to send a warning, as clear as I can. I was on a phone call with 20,000 black men. The word protect came up about 1,000 times. Protect this sister. Protect this sister. We're going to protect her. Protect her. You're about to see something you haven't seen before. Look, people messed around with Hillary Clinton and said a bunch of mean stuff to her. Black men set that out. We won't set this out. So I don't think that the Republican Party understands that all the work that they did trying to get us over there, two more days of this, it's going to be a problem.
Look, and the strategy is in part also to draw a wedge between black men and black women, which if you listen to Van, he's saying that's not going to work, but that is the strategy, is to say, oh, they're so focused on women, black women, they're not focused on you.
Let me ask this question, though, because the people on this call that you're talking about were a subset of the population, and one could argue were a subset of the population that you didn't have to worry about in the first place, because these margins are so crazy. Democrat math requires you basically to get 105% of black people to vote for them. So if this goes from 90% of black men voting for the Democrats to 80, which is still 4 out of 5, which is still overwhelming, you still got a problem. So I agree with you that there is a significant portion of this population that is doing that. The question is really more so the people who are tied into the YouTube algorithms that tie a little bit too much in these notions of masculinity. How are you going to reach them on this one? Like Stacey Abrams in Georgia, I think, is the great example about what was the black male support for her or the lack thereof when it came down to it.
I think this is going to wind up being a little bit different because I think that when you see black women moving the way that they're moving, at 40,000 on a phone call last night, I think the level of social pressure on black men to stand up this time, because this is not against some weirdo governor. This is about Donald Trump. And so I think, there will be some black men who peel away, but I think that motion is going to be frozen. I think to the extent that if it just stayed Joe Biden, I think you'd have seen a big flow of black men. I think you're going to see black men freeze and begin to move back because the despicable Joe and his hoe, that stuff that's starting to bubble up, that is not going to work.
And there's a women angle to this as well, because every woman is familiar with mediocre white men telling them you didn't earn this. And that's what they're saying about a woman who's an attorney general, a U.S. senator, a vice president, a federal prosecutor. The resume's there. You're going to hear a lot of that come up. And I think that there is something that a lot of these women in the suburbs who don't like Donald Trump but were gravitating toward him because they felt like Joe Biden was weak could see this and be like, I'm going to be with her. That's a resume I'm impressed with.
There is the double haters issue, right? I mean, at the end of the day, at the path the Democrats were on, there was a very likely loss with President Biden. Voters had made up their mind on where they were. The class of double hater voters, I know posters who hate that term, but there are a group of voters who didn't like either candidate, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Kamala Harris is a different messenger. And the other thing, too, that I think just hasn't been factored in yet, there's so much we don't know about the next 3.5 months. Absolutely. But one thing we don't know, and I think this gets overlooked, is President Biden delivering a sporadic at best message against Donald Trump. He was not really campaigning. He would give an occasional speech about democracy. He was not out there doing very much. Frankly, the last few weeks have been the closest thing to a campaign that he really did in a sustained way, and it still wasn't enough. So when someone is framing the argument against Donald Trump in a sustained way, that could have a very different effect on the polling than what we've seen so far. It may not, but there's just been an absence of that.
Are you suggesting she was a DEI hire?
100%. She was a DEI hire.
Okay, our panel is back. Elliot Williams.
Yeah. Well, look, he's onto something. He's onto something insofar as it's really troubling that a candidate is led by someone who got into law school partly on the basis of gender and a number of characteristics about them that bump their chance. Oh, wait, that's J.D. Vance. I'm sorry. J.D. Vance, by virtue of being from a diverse part of the country, first-generation college student, and right now, male, all would necessarily have helped his chances of getting in. That's diversity and DEI when you use the term, the consideration of people's backgrounds in their advancement. So this whole debate is sort of nonsense. It's a slur. It's a buzzword. He knew exactly what he was doing there.
Yeah, it's a bullhorn, I would say.
Yeah. It's not a dog whistle, it's a bullhorn.
It's a bullhorn. And, I mean, it's offensive. And again, I think what we're going to see is an effort on the part of the GOP to draw Democrats into this kind of argument and this sort of, let's talk about culture wars and let's talk about racism instead of the issues. They would rather see us defending that and having a conversation about that than the issues. But it's also, let's be honest, what it is. It is othering. It is a way to undermine her credibility, her intelligence. I mean, we see this with women, candidates of color all the time. And I don't think it's going away. I think Donald Trump is not going to be able to help himself. I think that's mild.
Well, yeah, and
based on where I think we'll be in a couple
weeks. Well, to that point, let me see if I have it here. Our friends over at the New York Times write this. This is Maggie Haberman, Jonathan Swan. Mr. Trump, for his part, has been trying to soften some of his harshest rhetoric about seeking vengeance on his rivals ahead of the general election, but over many years, he has turned off a sizable proportion of college-educated voters and suburban women with his rhetoric on gender and race. And the Harris candidacy introduces the risk of Mr. Trump lashing out at her and further alienating those voters. And I had one person who used to work for Trump who emailed me and said, this is just going to play right to the worst of his instincts.
So let me jump into this pool again. There is first of all, I think when you see these twits, it's clickbait. Again, we talked about words matter and context matters and all of that. So I think for these members of Congress, they're saying these things to a certain extent for clickbait. More importantly, though, and this is a debate that's really happening in corporate America and other places in America, where you're seeing ESG, DEI, this language, these acronyms kind of lose some of their luster because there's been a bit of an overreach in terms of where they affect everyday Americans in terms of the hiring process and other things. So I think you're seeing a cultural backlash against this language. And with that, I think the Republicans are trying to take advantage of, companies are doing away with the term DEI. They're now talking diversity. They're doing away with the term ESG, and they're talking about other parts of environmental concern. So again, language matters, words matter. This is a bit of clickbait, but there is an open debate in this country about whether or not we've gone too far to the other side.
But I think it's chicken and egg because folks turned those acronyms into slurs and buzzwords. No one in America, I assure you, can tell you, many people cannot say what DEI stands for or what it represents in workplaces and business and so on. A lot of people probably couldn't tell you what CRT, critical race theory, stands for, but right away, opponents found a way to sort of turn this into a buzzword. The "Don't Say Gay" bill on the left.
I was going to say, let's call Ron DeSantis, right? I mean,
so
that
all
has
the
been
above.
the
And
focus
so
of a lot of this.
this is your world.
No,
It's
this is my point. That words
right?
matter, acronyms matter. Acronyms can be turned into weapons in this case.
But when I say chicken and egg, it's not necessarily always the left weaponizing it. I think the folks who were opponents were very, very successful at turning these things into problems.
I mean, look, this is a debate discussion. Now we're going to be having basically every morning. So welcome to it. All right.
See you tomorrow.